All right, let's get into this here. We're gonna go 2024 most improved teams, starting with Nebraska. A lot has been made of this offseason for Nebraska. Not only the highlight with Dylan Raiola coming in, but also some really nice pieces in the portal. Return that with some nice players coming back from just a year ago, and you got them top three in returning production and Bill Connolly's, and obviously the famous Matt Rule year two jump, which we've seen at Temple and Baylor and other places like not so much in the Panthers, right, in Carolina and the NFL, but this is college where Matt Rule thrives. And they won last year. To remind you, they went 5-7 and they blew away in November. They had a chance to go to a bowl game, maybe win a Big Ten West title, the last one ever. And they blew it thanks to some poor quarterback play and some injuries as well. And guess what? Henry Harmberg still there, right? The guy who played majority of the snaps there, but Jeff Sims is gone, and you insert Dylan Raiola, who a lot of people are penciling in to be the starter, to be the hero for them next year. A lot of expectations for him, but in our minds, they're over in total, right? 7.5 on Vegas, and we think there's a real chance that they meet that line with 7-8 wins, and obviously there'll be a huge jump from 2023 to 2024.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of their offense. If you want to talk about defense, they were a little bit underrated last year. I know the stats are skewed because they didn't play that many great elite offenses, okay? But consider this, okay? They finished 11th in the country in points per game allowed. They finished 6th in rushing yards per game allowed. They finished uh 8th in passing yards per attempt allowed, 4th in passing or yards per pass completed. So yeah, again, some of that was you played against Minnesota. You played against some of those teams in the Big West or the Big Ten West. But here's the thing, CD, I want you to guess how many. Now this is projected starters. This is going to absolutely shake up. We're talking about this in April. Okay, the starters is not set in these depth charts, but this is like projected stars. What I'm looking at right now, like how many of these starters on defense do you think have played at least 4 years of college football?
To me, it's got to be hopefully close to double digits there, 9 to 10.
Yeah, it's 10. 10 out of your 11.
Jeez.
That's pretty nuts. That's pretty nuts. And also, like, you have some depth there too, like um on the defensive line, but that defensive line depth is going to be young. So we'll see where all that stuff comes from, but or where the production is going to come defensively. But I think you get an experienced defense and some explosive weapons on offense and a really good coaching staff. You could make some magic for Nebraska. You said they're over on a win total of 7.5. They won 5 games last year.
Yeah,
That's a
just
2.5
play.
win uh, improvement right there. If they win 8 games, that's a 3 game win improvement. That's pretty significant if you ask me. In just 1 year turnaround of Matt Rule tenure.
Yeah, you mentioned that defense. Tony White was a serious candidate for multiple head coaching jobs this offseason for good reason. What he did
Oh,
with that defense this year with a just uber limited offense. Yeah, like you mentioned, yes, that were they playing these high flying offenses? No, not necessarily. But you don't get a ton of these elite offenses on your schedule this year, anyways, right? Like last year, you kind of got exposed by Colorado early in the season. I get that. They were healthy, they were fired up, home game for them. It was wild. But this year you get obviously UTEP, Northern Illinois, Northern Iowa in the offseason, as well as welcoming back Colorado in the out of conference there. And then Illinois, right? Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, UCLA, Iowa, even Wisconsin, you throw in there. USC's got a new quarterback system. So like there's a lot of teams there and quarterbacks that don't necessarily scare you, and or teams that are adjusting to new coaches or new coaching styles and whatnot. And obviously, Nebraska fans are no stranger to offseason hype, right? And an overwin total over a bowl game, and then just to have it fail expectations. But why is this year different for you, Matthew? We've been skeptical of Nebraska in the past, right? We've been pretty skeptical of them, right? But what do you think different this year two in a matter like gives you confidence to put them on this list?
the offensive line.
Yep.
Is that crazy? I mean, like they weren't the best offensive line in the Big Ten by any stretch, but like there were games like teams knew that Nebraska was going to run the ball. They knew that Jeff Sims could not throw the ball, and yet they were moving bodies. They were moving bodies. It literally was only when they asked Jeff Sims to throw the ball that's the reason why they lost to Minnesota. They didn't move the ball terribly on the ground. It was literally when Jeff Sims was asked to throw the ball that they lost the game. It's crazy. Colorado, obviously, I mean, everyone kind of ran all over them, but I thought Nebraska was fine. I mean, they were 34th in rushing yards per game. They averaged 4.4 yards per attempt on runs. And they also ran the ball the seventh most at the seventh highest clip of any other team in the NCAA. So like teams knew that they were going to run the ball, and they were still wildly successful. And also that's reflected, you know, uh, like their third down percentage was not great, but it would have been a lot worse. It would have been a lot worse. And I feel like with better quarterback play, you're going to see that third down percentage skyrocket. You're going to see that red zone percentage, which was terrible last year. You're going to see that skyrocket. If you can just get consistent runs on first and second down, which they did last year, and half, I mean, I'm saying half decent quarterback play, especially with these receivers.
Yeah, and obviously a lot was made if you're a Nebraska fan or tuned into to recruiting and I guess Nebraska football. But Donovan Raiola, their offense line coach, right? You mentioned how good they got last year, and I think they're gonna be pretty damn good this year. He gets a huge raise in the offseason. And part of that, everyone's like, oh, he's just the uncle of Dylan Raiola, and that coincidence there. And maybe that's part of it, but he was a legit good offensive line coach for you last year. And what Matt Rule did is he built a pretty darn good staff in year one. And maybe you shake things up on the offensive side of the ball, right? But obviously defensively and O-line wise, you keep things pretty consistent, which is nice for you, to build on the year two. I'm gonna name a couple transfers for you that I really like. I'm gonna give you a throwback to Isaiah Nair, right? A couple years ago, he was the guy coming over from Wyoming to Texas, could never stay healthy, could never get on the field, and he was gonna be a major impact player for them. I am really excited to see what he can do this year, and hopefully another year removed from that big injury he suffered at Texas, and I think he could be a real playmaker. And Jamal Banks from Wake Forest was criminally underrated in the ACC there for a while now. Those two guys, combined with a couple of linemen, a couple of defensive players, that can do some real damage for Nebraska this year. What's an already pretty deep and well-constructed team with a ton of returning talent. You supplement a certain spots there with some playmakers that you maybe haven't had to complement a guy like Malachi Coleman, who we talked about before, and really get Dylan Raiola very comfortable in this offense in year one.
Yeah, and have we even talked about their schedule?
No, I
Which,
mentioned a little bit. I mentioned a little bit
but like
how they don't play a ton
this,
of good quarterbacks, but
is this the most manageable schedule in the Big Ten? One of them.
it's about as good as you could have had. Because to be honest, you're not going to beat Ohio State probably, so you're having them on the road anyways, right? Rutgers a team that's people are improving. You get them at home. Wisconsin's improving. You get them at home. Obviously, you don't have to go to the other side of the country in UCLA. You get them at home. I think it's pretty darn manageable. And obviously, yeah, with Purdue and Illinois and Iowa supplemented in there, those are teams that you should absolutely beat. In year one in Indiana, absolutely should beat them. So, I mean, I'm looking here, and 8 wins, 9 wins is yes. Is it high expectations for Nebraska football in recent history? Absolutely. But is it realistic to attain that? Absolutely. Absolutely.